I didn't even flinch when the HOA president slammed her hand on the table and demanded my brother be removed from the neighborhood immediately. She had no idea who she was speaking about, and I wasn't about to enlighten her. Instead, I let her rant red-faced and loud until she finally stopped for breath. That's when I quietly slid a single sheet of paper across the polished oak. It wasn't a threat letter. It wasn't a protest. It was a federal operations notice stamped with an FBI seal. Her eyes skimmed it once, then again, and I swear you could watch the blood drain from her face as she realized just how far out of her depth she was. But let me back up. This didn't start with a showdown or even a major disagreement. It started, like most HOA nonsense, with something small, something so ridiculous you almost want to laugh it off. When I first moved into the neighborhood, I wasn't looking for a fight. Quite the opposite, actually. I had spent the better part of my adult life in motion college, jobs, helping family through medical issues, moving from one cramped rental to another. By the time I bought this place, all I wanted was stability. A little house tucked back against a wooded lot, with a wraparound porch and a driveway that wound just enough to feel private. The kind of spot where you could hear crickets at night, instead of traffic. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and it had the kind of peace I thought I'd been chasing for years. Most mornings I'd sit out on the porch with coffee, watch the mist burn off the trees, and just breathe. My brother, when he wasn't tied up with work, would come by to visit. We'd fish in the creek, patch things around the house, or sit in silence like only siblings can. He was younger than me, but carried himself with this quiet confidence that always made people assume he was the older one. He never bragged, never flashed what he did for a living, but he had that look someone you didn't want to cross without good reason. To the HOA, though my property was nothing more than a line on their control map. They weren't interested in the history of the place or the fact that I'd bought it outright without a single lien. They wanted rules followed, dues collected, and every lawn trimmed to within an inch of its life. At first I tried to stay invisible. I paid the dues, ignored the petty notes about seasonal decorations or inconsistent mailbox color, and kept to myself. The spark, if you can call it that, came on a Saturday morning when my brother came by in his government-issued SUV, nondescript, dark, clean, nothing flashy. He parked it in my driveway, stepped out with his duffel bag, and we went inside to fix a leaky faucet. Within 20 minutes, there was a knock at the door. Not a polite neighborly tap and aggressive pounding that made the windows rattle. I opened it to find the president, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She didn't even say hello. She pointed past me toward the driveway and demanded to know who the suspicious man was. I explained, calmly, that it was my brother visiting for the weekend. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't. She launched into a tirade about unregistered vehicles, dangerous strangers, and how this neighborhood doesn't allow that kind of presence. I told her, again calmly, that my driveway was private property, and she had no authority to dictate who I invited into my home. She didn't like that answer. The next day, a violation notice appeared in my mailbox claiming I was harboring unauthorized guests. That phrase alone told me everything I needed to know about how the board viewed themselves, like some miniature government with the right to approve or deny who walked on my land. I sent a polite email back reminding them that their bylaws did not extend to personal guests. No response. By the following week, things escalated. A patrol car rolled slowly past my house, circled the cul-de-sac, and parked across the street for nearly half an hour. I didn't think much of it until my brother arrived again that evening, and almost on cue, 2 more squad cars pulled up, lights flashing. Officers at my door. The HOA president had called 911, claiming a potentially armed intruder was on my property. That intruder was my brother who, as it happened, was very much armed, but also very much authorized to be. See, what the HOA didn't know, couldn't have known, was that he was FBI, and not just in some desk job. He was in the middle of an ongoing investigation that required him to be in the area. His visits to my house weren't just about leaky faucets or fishing. They were operational cover. The officers, To their credit, seemed embarrassed once they checked IDs and realized the situation. My brother remained professional, calm, flashing his credentials and saying little else. They left without incident, but the damage was done. The HOA had crossed a line they didn't even realize existed. I tried one more time to be civil. I wrote to the board, laid out the facts, and asked them to refrain from harassing my family. Their reply was almost laughable. They doubled down, claiming they had community safety obligations and would continue to monitor all visitors. That's when something in me shifted. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done playing nice, done hoping they'd see reason. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of folders. Property records, HOA bylaws, copies of every notice they'd ever taped to my door, and alongside them a much thinner, much more dangerous file documents my brother had quietly left with me just in case. Federal authority paperwork, notices of jurisdiction, seals that carried weight no HOA president could hope to match. For weeks I became almost monastic. I'd work my day job, then spend nights combing through bylaws, statutes, and county zoning maps. I documented every encounter, photos of notices, recordings of conversations, timestamps of patrol cars lingering by my driveway. My brother, without ever breaking protocol, quietly advised me on the limits of their authority versus his. The more I read, the calmer I became. Knowledge has a way of cooling rage into precision. Neighbors began to notice the tension. Some avoided me entirely, afraid of being associated with the troublemaker. Others whispered support, but wouldn't say it out loud. That isolation only sharpened my focus. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing to expose them. The moment came during a quarterly HOA board meeting. I walked in late, quietly, letting them finish their usual parade of complaints about weeds and trash bins. Then the president, smug as ever, raised the issue of suspicious activity at my residence. She gestured toward me, inviting whispers. From the crowd, that's when I opened my folder. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply placed the federal operations notice on the table in front of her. One page, sealed, signed, and very much outside her control. She picked it up, expecting perhaps another protest letter, and when her eyes landed on that seal, everything about her posture changed. Her shoulders slumped. Her face drained of color. She looked up at me like someone realizing they'd stepped into traffic a moment too late. I let the silence do the work. Finally, I said, "You've been interfering with something you have no jurisdiction over. My guests are not your concern. They are federal business. This is the last time we will have this discussion." You could hear a pin drop. A couple of board members glanced at one another, suddenly unwilling to back her up. One even cleared his throat and suggested moving on to other business. She nodded, but her eyes never met mine again. After that meeting, everything shifted. The patrol cars stopped appearing. The notices stopped coming. The president herself resigned 2 months later for personal reasons. Rumor has it the HOA received a quiet but firm letter from someone far above their pay grade, advising them to cease all interference with my property. Life returned to what it should have been in the first place: quiet mornings on the porch, evenings fixing things around the house, my brother dropping by when his work allowed. The neighbors who had once avoided me started waving again, a little too quickly, as if to erase their silence. I didn't hold it against them. Fear makes people do strange things. What I do remember, though, is the expression on that president's face when she realized just how small her kingdom really was. That look was worth every long night at the kitchen table, every ounce of patience I forced myself to hold. Because in the end, I didn't need to raise my voice. I just had to let the truth speak louder than her threats. Now, when I drive through the neighborhood, it's peaceful again. Sometimes people wave. Sometimes they look away. Either way, it's quiet. And that's all I ever wanted.